Hey space fans, Megan here. Before we dive into today's episode, a quick note for our listeners. This conversation was recorded back in July 2025, and a lot has happened since then. Regan and the growing team at Space Innovation Canada have refined their mission, advanced their partnership roadmaps, and progressed significantly over the past several months. You'll hear more about that in Regan's updated introduction that we recorded with him. Some details later in the conversation reflect that earlier moment in time, but that core direction remains aligned. With that context, let's jump in.
Please remember, the views expressed on Albertans in Space by our guests and hosts alike are opinions and do not represent the entire industry as a whole. Our podcast serves only as a platform, and all topics discussed are primarily for educational purposes only. Welcome to Albertans in Space, the series where we talk to Albertans making waves in the local and global space industry. In today's episode, we speak with Regan Hinchcliffe, co-founder and director of development at Space Innovation Canada. We're going to chat about how and why Space Innovation Canada is supporting pioneering research projects in Canada. I'm your host, Zach Trolley.
And I'm the co-host and Captain Planet fan, Megan Westelmajor. Zach, what kind of currency do astronauts use in space?
Starbucks.
Bingo. Now, if you're going, can you get me a venti Canadiano with a little bit of cream, light ice, light water?
Not doing any of that.
Sorry, I've got my own coffee.
There we go. That's why we have our crew. Albertans in Space is filmed in the city of Calgary on Treaty 7 territory. This land, traditionally called Mohkinstsis, belongs to many nations and peoples who make their home here. We honor the traditions taught by our elders to acknowledge the generosity of Mother Earth and to take care of our land as humanity expands to new worlds. Throughout Season 1 and 2, we've had the opportunity to speak with motivated Albertans who are inspiring and encouraging progress not just in Canada, but all over the world. National pride is, for many, a huge factor in safeguarding a future for next generations and leaving a lasting legacy. In 2025, international politics have pushed Canadians together now more than ever, and Canadians are eager to support and cultivate their own identity and sovereignty.
Albertans are pushing to diversify our economy from an oil and gas focus to investments in tech, film, gaming, and science and aerospace. We ask our guests each episode for their favorite quote, but never ask ourselves.
No.
But my recent favorite quote is by anthropologist and author Margaret Mead. Never underestimate the power of a small group of committed people to change the world. In fact, it's the only thing that ever has.
Now, change requires persistence. That's a powerful message right there. And if we play our cards right, Albertans will make a fundamental impact in space for Canada.
Let's talk about the impact of aerospace throughout history. Humans have always been captivated with flight. The Greeks told tales of gods, kings, and heroes that flew on flying horses, rode celestial chariots, or donned mystical wings in order to fly. I absolutely loved winged horses when I was a kid. Pegasus was my favorite. I was very disappointed that I would never get to meet one. What was your favorite mythical creature?
My favorite mythical beast would have to be the dragon. It is majestic, strong, mysterious, a little bit leathery, just like me. But I did read a lot of Celtic-inspired fantasy in my youth, and I still wish that I could become a dragon rider.
Besides genetically engineering a mythical beast, how did humans finally get the chance to soar through the sky?
Well, we started more as a float than a soar. So in 1783, the hot air balloon was invented, and for the first time, earthbound humans could take to the skies. Using paper and fabric, inventors constructed a huge bag to hold air, then it was heated from a fire burning straw and wool. As the hot air expanded inside the balloon, it became less dense compared to the air outside the balloon. It created buoyancy, causing the balloon to lift up, up, up into the air.
That takes a lot of confidence that that's not going to fall down. I've never been in one, and I kind of don't.
I've never been in one myself.
Yeah. We clever humans kept on inventing, and in 1804, we invented the glider, and we finally got to ride the wind. For the next century, the glider captured imaginations and would be the inspiration for two bicycle mechanics who, in 1903, flew the first powered flight at Kitty Hawk. Love the name, by the way.
Are you talking about the Wright brothers?
I am. They're famously recognized as the first to build and fly an airplane. The flight lasted just 12 seconds, traveled 120 feet, and reached a top speed of 6.8 kilometers an hour. How much is that in kilometers?
6.8 kilometers per hour. And with that, humans now have the ability to fly, not just above land and over mountains, but eventually through space. And it took 66 years from that first powered flight in Kitty Hawk to humans landing on the moon in Tranquility Bay. An absolutely amazing achievement.
All these inventions can't be cheap. Someone needs to be footing the innovation bill, right?
Innovation and commercialization is very expensive. As we found out in season 1, getting financial support to develop technology is essential for progress to be made. And that's a big risk with innovation, is that you're not always sure what's going to pay off, and the complexities of space ventures increase that risk. Now, today, our guest is no stranger to risk. Regan is an ambitious entrepreneur who is passionate about finding funding for space ventures.
Born and raised in Regina, Saskatchewan, Regan Hinchcliffe's journey to the space industry began as a natural evolution of his entrepreneurial journey, a unique one, to say the least. He's a graduate of Campbell Collegiate and the University of Regina, where he took psychology and philosophy. In the late 2000s, Regan played lead guitar in a band he started called Ink Road. With this venture, he was pulled into a world of promotion, live events, and audience building. The skills he learned led him to his first business, S Media, in 2011. It was then he discovered that entrepreneurship itself was a form of creative expression. S Media would become a successful multinational digital marketing technology leader, earning recognition as one of Canada's top 500 fastest growing companies 4 years in a row. The shift to space occurred when he witnessed the billionaire space race unfold as companies like SpaceX, Blue Origin, and Virgin Galactic made incredible headlines in 2020 and 2021. As he likes to say, and we've heard on the show already, the sky is no longer the limit. It was beyond space. And even beyond space, he realized the only true limit is imagination itself. What began as fascination over time revealed itself to be a calling, something deeper, something he couldn't ignore or silence. Regan would go on to become the VP for Public Engagement at Avro Aerospace and the Director of Development for Space Innovation Canada, two roles that reflect the dual engine of this mission. At Avro, he supports the development of next-generation propulsion systems and sovereign launch capabilities aimed at reducing the cost of air and space travel for Canadians. Regan is helping develop a national space innovation platform that connects research, development, talent, industry, and strategic capital. The goal, to help transform Canada's distributed space efforts into coordinated sovereign capability and long-term economic impact. That's a huge goal to accomplish, but I think they can do it.
Let's bring him on the show.
Welcome, Regan.
Regan, welcome to Albertans in Space. It's so good to have you here. So we have a burning question for you. Space is expensive, right?
Yep. It's getting less expensive, but yes, it's expensive.
So tell us about what this foundation is doing to make it less expensive.
Of course. Thanks, Zach. At Space Innovation Canada, or SIC, a federally incorporated nonprofit, we are advancing plans to establish Canada's next generation inland, suborbital launch, and microgravity test spaceport in Alberta. This spaceport will form the foundation of a NATO-aligned accelerator program, lowering the barrier of entry to flight validation for researchers, post-secondary institutions, and SMEs across the Allied Innovation Network. Canada currently has no active suborbital launch testbed. Innovators must go abroad to validate technologies requiring high altitude or microgravity testing, capabilities vital to aerospace, robotics, biomedicine, clean tech, dual-use innovation, and much more. So Space Innovation Canada's mission is to change that by creating sovereign, affordable, and secure testing infrastructure so Canadian and allied innovation can be developed, tested, and commercialized on Canadian soil. Canada has the ingredients to lead in space: strong research institutions, innovative companies, and national ambition, yet the ecosystem remains fragmented. Without domestic launch capability, technologies stall between lab and market while talent and IP drift abroad. Strategic funding like industrial and technological benefits remain underleveraged without a delivery system focused specifically on space. Sovereign launch is the missing pillar. It connects research to reality, giving Canada domestic access, data, and the feedback loop every thriving space economy depends on. With it, Canada gains data sovereignty, IP and talent retention, and a commercialization platform that keeps value at home. And that's where Space Innovation Canada steps in. To guide this mission, we're building a world-class advisory and board team spanning policy, allied collaboration, communications, technical systems, launch operations, commercialization, governance, Indigenous engagement, and STEM development. It includes David Beck, former U.S. Space Force leader and founder of Space Tech Limited, Kim Van Vliet, founder of Convergex and Wave, and Harvey Doan, former COO of Maritime Launch Services. And together, the whole team provides the leadership to build a credible, executable, and nationally aligned capability for Canada and its allies. So we're not only building launch pads, we're building execution infrastructure. SIC will connect academia, industry, government, investors, and SMEs to accelerate innovation, develop workforce skills, and turn research into readiness. Delivered through a Prairies-based public-private consortium, the Alberta Spaceport and Accelerator will align with PrairiesCan's regional innovation ecosystem priorities. SIC will govern the data and stewardship layer, while private partners operate the infrastructure, ensuring accountability, agility, and reinvestment in national capability. Each test will generate valuable flight and environmental data, telemetry, weather, acoustics, and materials intelligence unique to the prairies. And over time, these data sets will help train AI models and digital twins that can optimize propulsion, forecast launches, improve materials performance, and ultimately help create a whole new generation of startups and innovation that stem from this foundation of data. So SIC is formalizing collaborations with the Arctic Training Center for extreme environmental testing, StarLab at the University of Manitoba for payload integration and workforce development, and ExoBiosphere based in Los Angeles and Luxembourg, which will provide microgravity testing aboard vast new commercial space station, extending our testing pathway from ground to orbit. And these partnerships, along with others, will form a ground-to-orbit continuum, linking terrestrial testing, suborbital validation, and orbital research in one coordinated ecosystem. And together, with Convergex and its Expand Commercialization Center, supported by Boeing, PrairiesCan, and Calgary Economic Development, SIC will close the loop, connecting prototypes to flight data, innovators to customers, and talent to opportunity. Across Canada, Reaction Dynamics, Nordspace, and Maritime Launch Services are advancing orbital capability, while SIC develops a suborbital and microgravity test infrastructure that completes the continuum. So, SIC will reestablish the prairies as a proving ground for suborbital and microgravity innovation, and invite allies to test in the West, building on a legacy of Churchill, Manitoba, where over 3,000 suborbital launches proved that world-class innovation could thrive in Canada's north. SIC will carry that legacy forward, turning ground into orbit, data into destiny, and ambition into capability. Our vision is a sovereign, resilient, and globally competitive Canadian space industry, one that creates jobs, strengthens security, and advances education, and drives long-term prosperity. And it all is beginning right here in Alberta.
I was going to lead into that question because you're based in Regina. So what is the strength that Alberta brings to the mission that you guys are obviously quite ingrained in and very passionate about?
Avro Aerospace, where I originally started my journey into aerospace, is originally launched out of Calgary, and
Oh, cool.
Atlantis Group of Companies is a Alberta-based group of companies with manufacturing and medicine hat, and collaborations with the University of Calgary, with the AeroCorps lab led by Dr. Craig Johansson, and then also we got Terrestrial X based out of Edmonton, who provides additive manufacturing. And so the networks are quite strong in Alberta. Alberta has a very strong industrial base and a lot of great SMEs and world-class researchers all across the board. We've also got, and I want to give a big shout out to Space and Defense Tech Alberta, who I recently met. They're an incredible initiative based at the University of Calgary. That's their headquarters, but they're building a pan-Alberta research ecosystem focused on next-generation dual-use space and defense innovation. They've brought together over 400 researchers across academia, government, and industry to collaborate on real applied technologies, everything from advanced materials, robotics, sensing systems, and secure communications. And yeah, just a big shout out to them. They're a consortia between a multitude of post-secondary institutions and technology institutions University of Calgary, University of Alberta, Athabasca University, NAIT, SAIT, Red Deer Polytechnic, and University of Lethbridge. So they're very aligned with the mission that we have from a national level, and they're doing that right there in Alberta. So huge shout out to them.
So Regan, that just sounds like everybody in the whole province is working together, which is fantastic. But how did you get your start? You mentioned working with Avro, but how did you get into aerospace to begin with?
The journey wasn't planned. It definitely wasn't traditional. In 2009, I started as a musician, forming a band called Ink Road, which pulled me into the world of live events, promotion, and audience building. And that experience taught me how to bring people together, how to create something from nothing, and how to inspire momentum around an idea. And that same creative energy evolved into entrepreneurship in 2011. I co-founded a company called S Media, which is a tech company that eventually grew into a multinational digital marketing leader. Which at one point had over 120 team members, and were recognized 4 years in a row as Canada's fastest growing companies. But over time, something drastic shifted within me as I watched companies like SpaceX and Virgin Galactic and Blue Origin begin breaking barriers. I had a realization that the sky was no longer the limit. The biggest challenges in space weren't just technical anymore. They were structural, economic, and organizational. And at first, I used that inspiration of space as a metaphor to get my team to think bigger and dream bolder. But that inspiration turned into a calling that I just couldn't shake. And I saw everything I had learned, scaling companies, raising capital, building partnerships, could be applied to something far more meaningful, impactful, and expansive. And that instinct led me into aerospace, where I joined Avro as the VP of Public Engagement. And over the last year, I've focused on building strategic partnerships, securing critical funding, and pushing forward Canada's mission for sovereign, sustainable access to air and space. And what I saw confirmed everything I felt, and noticed a much larger gap within the ecosystem that goes beyond just individual company successes, and really seeing that once again, Canada has the talent and ambition and the innovation to lead, but we lack the national coordination and delivery infrastructure to truly compete. So my mission extended beyond an individual company and into systems and a system architecture, getting it off the ground to help really fill that gap, to take all that raw potential, give it structure, to build a regionally anchored, nationally aligned delivery system that supports innovators, accelerates TRL development, and ensure Canada has a sovereign future in space. And I may not be writing music these days, but I'm still creating. Only now I'm building systems, companies, partnerships designed to serve, inspire, and to last. And because as an artist, I've come to realize something, that space is the most expansive canvas that there is. And I intend to paint on it with everything I've got. To me, space is more than rockets. It's about sovereignty. It's about resilience. And it's really what becomes possible when we stop waiting and start building.
That's very inspirational. I love that. And you're right. Being an artist means being good at many different things. You can be like a chef and be really great at cooking that beautiful dish. Like, have you ever seen anything more beautiful than sushi? I'm sorry. It's just so beautiful. Like I was going to say, like, please play us something. I see the guitar in the background and I'm getting excited, but I feel like you've just transferred those skills into something that is really important to talk about right now. How are you feeling like you're being received in eastern part of Canada?
I've been speaking with political leaders and being introduced to high-level agencies and speaking the mission, and it's being received very well. Canada, for us to be a sovereign spacefaring nation, have to be strong and resilient across all regions. And so we're a national effort. And as we build out this model in Western Canada, we're going to be extending and building the consortia across all regions. Right now, our just focus is the regional gap and building a strong foundation where we already have that foundation, and moving into a national effort that supports SMEs and academic institutions across the board. It's being received very well.
Well, I'm really excited to know more about Avro development. Does it stand for anything, Avro?
So the name is the same name that was purchased from Industry Canada. and it's the same name as the brand from back in the 60s that was pioneering aerospace in Canada. So the name was purchased. It's got a similar mission, just now moving into launch services and next generation propulsion. So Avro Aerospace is the commercialization and industry integration arm of Atlantis Research Labs. So Atlantis Research Labs, based out of Calgary, Medicine Hat, they develop aerospace intellectual property. They're an innovation company. And they also have leveraged that aerospace innovation to go into the clean tech sectors with a waste gas incinerator called PureJet. So dual use technology there. So Avro serves as the integration arm of that IP. So Atlantis develops the intellectual property. Avro then gets rights to license it, and then Avro provides the services. So say Atlantis develops a suborbital rocket. Well, then Avro then has rights to then leverage that rocket and commercialize it in the market. Mm-hmm. So that's an example. Or Atlantis is also developing in collaboration with the University of Calgary and the AeroCore Lab under Dr. Craig Johansson, next generation ramjet that can produce static thrust, which historically overcomes a large impediment on ramjets. Typically, ramjets cannot produce static thrust. Their efficiency only becomes really valuable when you're already going a certain speed. So you need to use alternative forms of propulsion to get there, which kind of reduces the efficiency and the cost effectiveness of a ramjet. And so they've built in collaboration with the UFC, built a proprietary intake system that allows for the ramjet to take off from a standstill, which now expands the mission profile of the ramjet across drones, space planes, and even rockets that go to space. And it can drastically reduce the barrier of entry of air and space access, which will ultimately improve the ecosystem in general. The whole point is to find ways to improve efficiencies across the industry, because the more efficient things are, the lower the barrier of entry for other startups to then come into the market. And that's really why we're really focused on building a suborbital sounding rocket that can be used by academic researchers and small medium enterprises to advance their technology and give them greater access to be able to put their technology on a payload that goes into, say, microgravity, so they can advance the technology readiness levels of their robotics. The next wave of space is going to be automation and robotics, because it's not going to be humans building stuff up there. And the cost of life support systems are more than 50% of getting stuff out there. So we want to be able to advance our robotics, but without access to launch capabilities for academic researchers in Canada, without easy access to be able to advance their technology, we're falling behind on a global level, because that barrier of entry for our technology to advance at TRL levels isn't readily available. So we really want to build that suborbital test bed that provides that easy access to be able to advance those technologies to get commercialized in the future. Because the future is in space. It's right. The new space economy. That's where we are right now.
Totally.
So Regan, let's talk about, you mentioned the barrier of entry and the ecosystem. What are some of the things that you're doing or you've seen in that ecosystem to help, elevate Western Canada into, I'd say, because I live here and I've worked here for many decades, the amazing skills and talents that we have, how do we get that to show through? How can we help the startup bring their ideas to the world?
Well, I really do once again believe it starts off with us having a foothold in sovereign capabilities. And right now, the big push is for sovereign launch capabilities. And there's a lot of headway being made in central and eastern Canada. Western Canada, we need to have a foothold in launch operations, which will give easier access for Western Canadian academic institutions, Western Canadian SMEs to get their technology on these suborbital test beds to be able to advance their TRL levels and have a foothold in that sovereign capability.
To get to space to see if it actually works, right? I mean, the test bench is great, but you want to get it into space. That's where we're going.
Well, yes. And first, it starts off with a test bed to then enable the research institutions. And right now in Western Canada, if we don't not get a foothold on that, we're going to be reliant on the incumbents in Central and Eastern Canada.
Right.
And so that's why we're building that here, because we believe that Western Canada should have a rocket that can be used for testing to advance and give priority to Western research and collaborations between the academic institutions that could fully leverage that technology. And yes, it does. The goal is to then have a foothold in sovereign operations for launch capabilities, because that's going to build our ecosystem here in Western Canada, and that's going to create a whole new wave of startups and technologies that get commercialized and create jobs here and keep talent here. Like overall, Canada not having a foothold in real sovereign spacefaring capabilities, we're losing talent abroad and we're losing IP abroad, and it's being sold back to us as consumers. So there's a big push for that right now. But now we're thinking a little bit more at the micro level. If Western Canada doesn't have a foothold in that, the same things are going to happen to Western Canada. We're going to be a subcontracting economy to the incumbents in Eastern and Central Canada. Right. So that's really where we're focused right now.
Totally. Building the people, building the infrastructure, building the tech, sharing, collaborating. I feel like all those things are things you learn when you're like 3 years old.
Yeah,
so like,
that's part of the whole supply chain, right? Like if we all work together.
Very important, those fundamental elements and creating confidence, right? Like we want to be confident as going into this conversation, because you're right, space is the new ecosystem that we need to be thinking of proactively. Sustainability, all those things like really make a difference.
And I mean, we all have in our mind the picture of the Canada arm with the Canadian flag on it. I mean, it was on the $5 bill, right? And the power of space to see that, and you're right, to see that, you know, a rocket go up or that piece of technology in there, and just seeing all the people, all the companies, the thousands of hours, the millions of dollars that go into doing that, that's pride right there, to see that work come together.
That's why our vision is Canada united by a resilient, sovereign, and globally competitive space industry. Space is the most difficult frontier, and when we come together to achieve these great feats, it brings together humanity in ways that I don't believe anything else really does.
Mm-hmm. What are the biggest challenges that you guys have faced since the inception?
Well, I would say structure always precedes capital. So right now, our goal is to build a strong team of advisors and a strong board of institutionally aligned individuals, and build the structure that can confidently take in the capital and deliver that capital. So right now, we're just in the building phase. We're building the partnerships, we're building the advisory, we're building the governance, and we're engaging with the partners. I mean, everything's a challenge. I guess we're confidently executing on phase one of building the structure. It's all challenging, I would say. We just needed to do it as a crawl, walk, run approach.
That's awesome. And so what's next? What's the next phase look like? And what would you want our listeners to know about what your initiatives are and how they can support?
To prove out the model as a regionally anchored, nationally aligned organization. Once we prove that out, the sovereign launch capabilities in the testbed become a pillar that grow the ecosystem. Well, now, once we build these pillars of capabilities that essentially act as ecosystem enablers, we then want to move out into supporting other types of projects that are enabled by these pillars that we're setting up. And the more pillars that we set up, the more enabling technologies that get set up, and then the ecosystem grows. We just keep expanding out these core capabilities that are required to enable a more vast and diverse ecosystem. So if there's a good comparison, I would say if you look at Canada's ocean supercluster, they take in hundreds of millions of dollars and they distribute those funds to help support early stage research and development all the way through to commercialization, but specifically into marine based technology and innovation. So essentially, our goal is to become the supercluster for Canadian sovereign space capabilities.
Now, Regan, Alberta is known Canada-wide and internationally as an oil and gas center, right? And I mean, it's more than petroleum to support that. We've got welders and machinists and drafters and engineers all over the place. Do you see a role for, that existing infrastructure and ecosystem to join you in this new supercluster? Do you see a synergy there?
The capabilities are cross-sector. A lot of these things they coincide within the new space economy. Western diversification is a huge priority. So these skills and capabilities are transferable in the new space economy. So yeah, the goal here is Western economic diversification.
I think, we think that would be absolutely amazing on the career fairs, people to see that, because, I'm sure you've seen it too, where you say, I didn't know there was space in Alberta. I didn't know there was space in Western Canada. And you say, yes, there is.
Well, I'm hearing the same. I'm hearing the same thing from my conversations with organizations in the east as well. So we're putting Western Canada on the map. We have the talent, we have the infrastructure, we have the research, we have the skills, the capabilities. We just need the connective tissues and the program delivery that's regionally anchored and focused on the strengths of a region, but nationally aligned, and then moving outwards from there.
And passion, that we've got that in spades.
Yes.
For obvious reasons. And money, you need money. Money is important.
And money, creating a system that can take in that money with a specific mission focus of sovereign space capabilities and Western economic diversification, for instance, in the West. So we need to create the system first that can take in that money to deliver on the sovereign space capabilities to give that foothold in there. So that's why creating the system and structuring it effectively comes first, and then it can take in the capital flows that deliver on specific priorities.
I just see it creating so many more jobs, and that is the whole basis of diversification. And I'm excited to see that come to life for your team.
Well, and it's not just jobs, or I guess it's the jobs as well, but we also have, another shout out to SOAR and STAR, who SOAR is they're the student rocketry team. And these teams aren't just building rockets, they're building Canada's future and aerospace leaders. So we got SOAR, based at the University of Calgary, has grown into one of the most advanced student hybrid rocketry teams in Western Canada. They've launched at Spaceport America, pushed the limits of engineering design, and built collaborative culture that rivals some startups. And meanwhile, STAR at U Alberta is making serious waves of their own, placing second in their category at Launch Canada and winning for payload design. Their work is a shining example of what happens when you combine technical ambition and a passion for learning and a supportive team. And both of these programs are training highly qualified personnel we'll need to drive Canada's space sector forward. Outreach is so important. We want to inspire our youth. We want to get these teams involved in actually building commercial capabilities to get them the flight heritage that they need, and then create jobs here in Western Canada so that they don't have to leave up to a foreign market, or they can stay here in Western Canada and have jobs because we're going to have a foothold in sovereign launch capabilities across Canada. So that's the goal.
Well, it's a sweet goal.
We went to go see a rocket launch in southern Alberta, and we're blown away at just the capabilities in the hobbyist sector, let alone the university and research sector. Like, we went there and they're launching rockets.
Yeah,
they're rocket scientists. Yeah.
And when I tell people, we went to go see a rocket launch, they're like, what? What are you talking about?
And it's beautiful. And now the next connection is, how do we translate that into commercial capabilities that create jobs, that create paying customers? And so academic research turning into commercial capabilities. And that's really where there's a big gap. And that's where we see ourselves really supporting the ecosystem there.
Well, that is fantastic. Regan, we are at the part of the podcast where we ask our guests for their favorite book. So we're going to don our book club hats here.
Book club hats?
Our book club hats. And we're going to ask you, what is your book that you want to share with our audience today?
Yeah, of course. So it's hard to pick just one, but obviously that's the whole point here. So yeah, I actually have 20 books. No, just kidding. So
many books.
This is not that kind of podcast.
Real impact on my journey is the 12 Rules for Life by Jordan Peterson. And it wasn't just the philosophy, it's how practical and grounding it felt during moments of chaos, transition, and big decisions. So one of the rules is stand up straight with your shoulders back. And it reminded me to show up with strength, even when I didn't feel it yet, especially in spaces where I was new, like the space industry. Sometimes posture is more than physical. It's energetic. Another one is treat yourself like someone you are responsible for helping. Really challenged how I was showing up for myself. I've always poured myself into work and teams and missions, but that rule reminded me that I can't lead well if I'm not caring for myself. Another one is a really, really important one is, discernment. Make friends with people who want the best for you. Help me be more intentional with my circle. This past year has shown me how important it is to be surrounded by people who believe in my vision and want to see me win, not just stay comfortable.
Right.
Compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to who someone else is today. That's always a tough one, I think, go across the board. Coming in a space from outside the sector, I had to let go of imposter syndrome, and that rule helped me stay focused on growth over comparison and just taking one step at a time. We're each on our own journey of growth and achievement, and it's just important to focus on each an individual's journey and strengths. Another one, set your house in perfect order before you criticize the world. You can probably see that in all the Facebook arguments and all that. So this was a tough but necessary reminder. It pushed me to take full ownership of my choices, my mindset, and how I move through the world, especially after stepping away from my previous company. Pursue what is meaningful, not what is expedient, might be one that shaped me the most. I left a successful business because I felt called to build something that served Canada's future. I walked into the absolute unknown with no security net, nothing. And even when the path was uncertain, that rule gave me the language for why I had to say yes to the unknown. Because I know that, you have to think, if I don't do this, will I regret it in the future? For sure. This is something that I'm called to do. And finally, pet a cat when you encounter one on the street. That one really reminded me to breathe, to slow down, that even in the middle of building something enormous and overwhelming at a lot of times, there's beauty in the quiet moments. And those moments matter just as much. This book overall didn't change my life all at once, but it met me at the right time, and it's helped me make braver, more intentional decisions ever since.
And I think that's really interesting. We've had a lot of guests. Some have business books, some have sci-fi books. And I think it takes all those things together. It's not just having a vision, it's following through, it's having the strength to do that, the support network to do that. So thank you very much for sharing that with us.
And those are all great reminders too, especially to achieve what feels like the unachievable. And for me, it's like when I think of space, it is very daunting to even broach the subject. And that's why Zach and I started this podcast, is I'm very curious and he's obviously very passionate about it. And how hard it is and how challenging every moment is. And you're taking on one of those biggest challenges, which is making a sustainable and viable community in Canada, Western Canada, specifically for the sake of our podcast. But it's all pretty incredible. So all those are great reminders.
Thank you. Appreciate that very much.
We've been asking our audience to submit questions for our guests. And today's question comes from a direct message on Instagram from Linda Gross from Airdrie, Alberta. And she asks, how often does an aerospace career lead to space? Can a background in aviation always be beneficial? I think you didn't come from space. You led, like myself, I kind of went the other way around. How often do you see aerospace people and other people moving into the space sector? What's that mix look like?
Yeah, so an aerospace career doesn't always lead directly to space, but today it's more possible than ever. We're in the era of the new space economy, a commercially driven, innovation-powered frontier where access to space is becoming faster, cheaper, and more inclusive. Careers that once stayed grounded in aviation or engineering are now reaching space through entrepreneurship, private sector innovation, and cross-disciplinary collaboration. A background in aviation can absolutely be an asset when it adapts. It brings deep strength like system thinking, safety culture, and operational discipline. But aviation is no longer the only gateway. The space sector thrives on contributions from robotics, AI, medicine, finance, policy, marketing, law, design. The new space economy is connected to a lot of things.
Everybody.
And it is. It really is. And personally, as we've talked about, I didn't come from aerospace. I came from entrepreneurship, building companies, aligning partnerships, scaling systems. And now I apply those same skills to help others reach space through infrastructure, funding, policy, national coordination. So to answer your question, no, not every aerospace career leads directly to space, but the ones that embrace complexity, bridge sectors, and build enabling systems, those are the ones that are shaping it. And the future of space isn't going to be built by engineers alone. It's going to be built by everybody.
I think it's pretty cool because you came from a non-aerospace background, and there are so many people who are like, I would love to work in space too. And they'll look at you and say, this guy can do it. And he's, like maybe he can help me do it. I love that. Thank you for that answer. And thank you, Melinda Gross, for asking that question.
Yeah. Thanks, Melinda.
Well, Regan, thank you very much for joining us today on this episode. I think, we learned a bit more about what's happening across Canada and, feel a bit inspired to take that personal journey. I think, it takes a strength to do it. We say all the time, space is hard, right? You're not going to wake up one day and be like, today I'm going to space and walk out the door. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of effort. And we applaud you for all the work you're doing to bring Alberta and Western Canada into that ecosystem and show the world what we can do.
Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Thank you.
Again,
thank you so much.
Really appreciate it. It's an honor to be here. I want to leave the audience with a personal mantra that guides me every day, especially during the toughest moments. Onwards and upwards and a space thereafter.
Beautiful.
I love that. I'm going to get that tattooed. We would like to thank Regan Hinchcliffe for joining us today.
And if you'd like to keep up to date on Regan and his efforts at Space Innovation Canada, they are always looking for support and collaborators. Shout out to Sandra Lynn for her writing research efforts, Matt Waterworth, sound video engineer for No Cap Content Studios, his assistant Parth Kelkar, 6 Degrees Music and Sound, and Kristen, our behind-the-scenes photographer, for helping us make this podcast sound and look amazing.
On the next episode of Albertans in Space, we speak with Madison Feehan, the CEO of Space Copy, and what it takes to be a young entrepreneur and 3D print in space.
Thank you so much for watching Albertans in Space. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Make sure to tune in to our socials to watch behind the scenes and exclusive content. You can watch Albertans in Space on TELUS Optic TV, Stream Plus, and our YouTube channel. For those who prefer listening, catch us on Spotify. If you like the show, don't forget to hit subscribe and give us a like. Your support means the world to us. Lastly, stay connected. Follow and say hi to us on Instagram at AlbertansInSpace_podcast and on TikTok at AlbertansInSpace. Bye for now.
See you next time.